Hello, everybody, and welcome to Thought Raid, a show where we take on thoughts and find better ways of thinking about them. I'm Brandon Brown, owner of United Gamers Nations and LA counselor, and with me today is the wonderful Tim Denock of Break the Meta and Life Coach. Yeah! I'm getting better at this, and hopefully we don't have to redo this whole thing because it's not popping up on YouTube. So let me just take a quick look. Oh, we're good! Oh, praise the Lord! For the past several times we've gone live, and it went live on Facebook, but it didn't go live on YouTube, so I'm so excited we have live in two proper places, and we don't have to redo that introduction. Praise the Lord. Well, anyways, welcome to Thought Raid, and specifically Get Naked Monday, where we metaphorically get naked and talk about things that are going on in our personal lives. And this week is this is my week, so I'm gonna be the one talking about what's going on in my life. And I decided there was like a revelation that kind of hit me today that I want to talk about. Something that I like specifically kind of knew in the back of my head, but it just now hit me. And so I want to take some time, honestly, to unpack this with you guys and with you, Tim, because I think there's more that could be plumbed out of this revelation. And so, yeah, so I want to do that. So, as many of you know who have been watching me and Tim for the past, we're getting close to a year. Believe it or not, Thought Raid will been around for a whole year come, I know, come April, and come the next 2 months, like a whole year. What? Wow. And so, for those of you who've been watching for a while, you've known, and we're going to bring the counter back to zero, but you've known that for...
Talking about porn.
Go past, yep. You've known for a while that over the past year, I've dealt on and off with porn. And I've been very intentional to kind of let you guys know about what I've been going through, so that, again, you know, I just want to kind of share my process of how I'm working through this, something that I've dealt with for a long part of my life, and that just suddenly decided to resurface last year. And over the year, we've talked about different aspects to what can it cause, you know, how do you handle it, all different types of things. And I think the most recent thing that we talked about was a specific walk that I was taking back in January, where I felt like God was sharing with me that there were things that he was specifically working on the inside of me that he wanted, you know, to take care of, that even though, yes, porn is not a good thing, there was just other more important things that he was working on, that at the right moment, when the harvest would come of whatever it is that he was working on, both those things would pull out at the same time. And so I went through all that, and I went through some counseling over the past month. I mean, I've been going through counseling for more than just a month. I've been going through counseling for several months. And just today, we're talking just this morning, I'm waking up. I have a specific dentist appointment that I had to go to today in the morning. And as I'm getting ready for that, there was some things that kind of started to connect in my mind. And specifically, what was brought to my remembrance was some of the things we talked about even a little bit earlier, back in like December, around that time frame, maybe about just January, where I was realizing that emotions can be like a storm. Like sometimes, you know, you're gonna go through emotions that have no basis in who you are or in reality, and you don't have to get caught up in those emotions. You can move past them and focus on other things until they pass themselves. Like, there's just sometimes you're gonna feel things that are just completely irrelevant to what you're going through, and they have nothing to do with who you are. And that was a huge revelation for me, because while I'd always known about the ability to take what you feel and put that somewhere else while you just refocus on what's in front of you. I'd always seen it done in a negative light, where people would take what they're doing and then they would shove it, and they would take what they're feeling and shove it and keep shoving it away until eventually it would explode and they would have a huge problem. And that was all that was modeled to me. There might have been people that were probably plenty of people that were handling it properly, but I didn't see that. All I saw were the people that would pretend like nothing was wrong, and then suddenly they just break down to the side of the road. So it's just, that's what I saw. So I was deathly afraid to ignore what I was feeling, because I was concerned that in doing so, that I would be avoiding problems and not properly dealing with them. And I'm the kind of person, I'm a slow train coming, and when I finally do arrive, I'm there and there's no turning backwards. But that's because along the way, there are so many different nuances that I'm working on in my life that by the time I finally come to the place where okay, I've got it together, it's because I've worked on all the little areas of the what ifs, and they've been answered, and then good, we move forward, we're not looking back. And that's worked really well in many parts of my life. Like when it comes to how I eat, the net sum of how I eat is a lot better than how I ate previously. I am more likely to eat healthier foods without complaint, because I've worked through a bunch of different nuances about, it tastes terrible, it takes too much time, whatever. So I'm willing to do better things than I was before. But not everything that I feel has to be dealt with. Some of it is just completely irrelevant. And so that was a big revelation that I had in January. So now we move to this morning, and I wake up, and I'm feeling just tempted. I want to look at porn, just flat out. I just want to. That's just is what it is. And that immediately makes me feel anxious, which doesn't help the situation. And I'm like, God, what do I do? Here I am again, and this temptation's coming back up again. So clearly there's something wrong, and I'm praising God through the process and going through what I know to do to resist the temptation. And so then I get up and I leave, and I begin to get ready to head out to go to the dentist. And as I'm in the shower, because the shower and the bathroom in general is a great place for revelation for God knows what reason. I still don't know why, but it just magically is.
It's weird, because I feel like God talks to me the most when I'm just hanging out in the shower. Just I'm one of those shower sitter downers. So sit and just lay in the shower and just receive the warmth and the calmness that is taking a shower.
Oh, that's nice. That's really nice. Yeah, I take long showers, and I found a meme that's shows percentage of me actually getting clean to percentage of hot water. It's much bigger. But anyways, here I am in the shower, and it just suddenly, I think God helped me connect specifically the two together of while the emotions that I felt while I was dealing with certain anxieties related to a friendship was an emotional storm that would pass, so also is what I'm feeling in temptation to look in porn. And that was a game changer for me, because up until that point, I honestly looked at what I was feeling, those temptations, as something's wrong with me. Specifically, there's something apparently I'm not facing. I don't know what, but I'm not facing it. And until I face whatever that nebulous thing is, then I'm going to continue having these moments where this temptation rises up, and there's just no point in trying to resist it, because the thoughts never go away. Meanwhile, I never thought that it was a storm, so I never attempted to ride out the storm. But when the revelation hit me that this could actually just be a moment of time, and if I just do something else and keep moving on and expecting it to pass, that eventually it could pass. I've been fine this whole day. I've been fine despite how yucky I felt in the morning.
Mhm.
So that was a big revelation that hit me. But I have more thoughts before I go into that, though. What are you thinking so far about all this?
I think you and I have much different ways about dealing with things.
Oh,
You're just talking about how when you're tempted by something, no, well, specifically this because you've been working on it so long, how it makes you feel anxious, and then you do all the things you know how to do, all your coping mechanisms, praising the Lord, messaging our accountability group, all that stuff. And I don't know if I'm lazy or I don't know what it is, but when I go through things like that, I kind of just allow myself to go through it, and just am open to God speaking to me through it instead of thinking that I have to force the process. Because for me, when I go through those emotional storms, as we're titling them, I especially when I'm feeling emotional, I can't think straight. I'm not thinking straight. Like the other last week, all that stuff that I was dealing with, that was very out of the norm for me. And to try and rationalize and think my way through it. Oftentimes, when I do that, I get lost in the circular, spiraling train thought that's just taking me down a rabbit hole that God doesn't want me to go down. So sometimes for me, it's just like I'm just going to relax and go through the process and trust that God's going to steward my heart the right way. I don't know, Brandon. It just I know how intentional you are about so many things, and that's like one of the reasons why I trust you as one of my trusted friends. You're very predictable, and you're very forward about things. Like I know that there is never ever going to be a grievance between us that's going to go unresolved because, well, one, I'm very forward about things like that, but moreover and more so, you are like, hey, let's tackle this right now. But it's interesting to me that you said I did all the things that I knew how to do and I was getting anxious because I knew that I was doing something wrong. I don't have that same mechanism. I'll know that I'm doing something wrong and I'll feel it, but I don't feel the anxiety that's accompanied by it.
Well, I don't know exactly why the anxiety is there. I can hypothesize. Like, I know the anxiety comes out of, wanting to do things exactly right and to be pleasing to whomever I'm trying to please. So in this case, being pleasing to God, or in previous cases, pleasing to my parents or whatever. But like my goal is, I want to do the right thing. If you say that in order to be successful, you have exactly 10 steps you must follow, then, I'm likely to try to once I'm convinced that that's right, I'm going to do what I can to do those 10 steps. And if I don't succeed, I don't look at it as this 10-step process is flawed. I look at it as I didn't follow this exactly right, and therefore that is the problem, that me, not them. So like my knee-jerk reaction has never been, well, let me look at what this person did to me, or that person did to me, or you're the fault, or that's the fault. I look and say, where did I do wrong? And that's just how I've been, and I've learned better ways of thinking because not everything is my fault. But in the areas of like specifically with porn, and dealing with that, and the emotional process that it's been, God's been, as I've talked about the whole time, God's been working on me. Like, don't be afraid, don't be afraid, because I knew, several years before this point, where it became an issue again, that anxiety was what threw me into porn. And so I knew, okay, well, that means we got to deal with anxiety, because if I feel anxious, that's going to make me want porn in the first place, which it does, because it's a good way to get my mind off of my anxiety, unfortunately. And that's why it's a temptation in the first place. But yeah, I don't know, just for whatever reason, my natural go-to is to become anxious about something. I don't know what it is about the way my brain works or whatever, but it's just how it typically is.
And Can you describe that for me? Because I know what anxiety feels like, but at the same time, I don't. When it comes to things like this, like, does your body itch? Are you just searching for answers? Do you feel unrestful? Like, what exactly is it?
Okay, well that's interesting. Well, I mean, anxiousness for me is it's definitely an unrest type feeling. There are some physical symptoms that come along with the feeling of anxiety, such as some kind of not exactly constriction that happens in this region, but kind of like
Mhm.
a tension that begins to happen. Um, my mind is like the Bible describes well. A person who's double-minded is like a wave tossed in the sea back and forth. So like my mind when I'm anxious is going back and forth about different things, and like I know what the word of God says, however I feel this way. What is correct? Does what I'm feeling
Mhm.
correct? Was what God's word say correct? Am I misapplying God's word? And so just I begin to spiral in my mind because like I don't know what the truth is exactly in comparison to what I feel, and I don't know how to get rid of these feelings. So I feel overthinking is another thing that occurs when I'm feeling anxious, which is why my natural
Mhm.
knee-jerk reaction is to overthink and make a complicated solution out of something that should otherwise be simple. Um, um, but it's like mental pain. Not necessarily that I'm in having a headache per se, but that I just feel conflicted. I mean, sometimes the tension gets strong enough that I do, like, all this muscles in here get so tense that I do have a headache. But
Mhm.
I don't know. It's just imagine something like this, where you're just on the inside, and you're conflicted, and you want to know what's right so that you could go back to doing the right thing, but you don't know what the right thing is, so you feel like you can't do anything until you figure out what the right thing is, and you just sink.
Mhm. Hmm.
It's that's kind of it's chaotic. It's painful. It comes with it sometimes comes with headaches. Sometimes it comes with just tightness of throat, or some kind of feeling in the stomach. Um, I don't know. And I'm probably not even doing it full justice in general, anyways. Nor could I probably, but there's a lot. It's both a mental experience and a physical experience, which
Mhm.
makes me think about side notes about stuff, but I don't want to go too far side on it. It just made me think about like how many symptoms we go through that we misinterpret as physical issues that are actually emotional issues. Uh,
Mhm.
and how sometimes, like, if anxiety goes unchecked, can turn into heart problems.
Hmm.
you know, because they often go hand in hand. Go ahead.
How do you determine, as you're going through this, and for the viewers that might be going through this, how do you determine when you need to be intentional and when you just need to chill and let God do His thing?
Well, that's something I'm still learning. Okay, because like for the first time in January is the first time God said this is a storm, and storms pass. And so
Mhm.
like before that point, I really didn't know. Before that point, I thought every little thing that I felt must be dealt with, and unless I was happy and peaceful, then something was wrong and it needed to be dealt with. And
Mhm.
and so the problem with that though was that as I went along with the porn especially, I got to a place this year where I absolutely didn't want it. Like there was no, I wasn't hiding it from you or the rest of the accountability group. Or even Thought Rate. I wasn't being deceptive. I knew what the word of God says and trusted it. Um I did all the, like I said, like we've said many times over, I've done every one of my processes. So like, like if you do everything you know to do, and it's not a matter of like you think this is an okay thing in your brain and you're not
Mhm.
trying to hide it, then what really is the problem then? Because it's like there's no bondage on the inside of me that was like doesn't want to let it go. Because that's
Mhm.
that's one main thing I would see with people that were addicted to porn. They would think that it was okay. So of course I'm not going to let it go because in their mind this is an okay thing. But that wasn't me. So it's like, how can I, after spending all this time with Jesus and counselors and friends, being accountable, why is this still a thing? And that's when I began to realize maybe there's not something wrong with me. Maybe this is just a storm that will pass, much like the emotional storm that I went through when I was having an issue with another friend, and I wanted to deal with the problem right then and there, but I couldn't, so I had to wait, and I had to sit with those emotions and not allow them to eat my lunch, or so to speak, eat my peace. So I think I didn't fully answer your question because it's complex. Like, there are times, more times than not so far in my life, where there were things that I had to talk out in order to move past how I was feeling. But I'm now encountering times where no amount of talking it out is going to solve the issue because it's not an issue. My issue is that I'm believing the storm is who I am. And they're two separate things. We already know as Christians that we're three-part beings in one body. So I already know that contesting within me is a flesh that wants the quick and immediate. I want donuts. I want sex. I want air, water, whatever. I need all these different things, and by golly, I'm gonna go for that the quickest and easiest way possible with the highest release of serotonin and dopamine. Like, we already that's the flesh. And then I got the soul, which doesn't know the difference and is trying to figure that out. So, like, the soul is wise enough to know that not everything that the body wants is good for it. So, like, it can logically rationalize, okay, let's not go for donuts today. Let's go for a salad. I don't know. Just something basic or easy. So it knows that, but it has to constantly be the buffer for the flesh that only wants what it wants, and so it just sits there eternally receiving torment from the flesh. And then you got the spirit, the part of you that is eternal, that always wants the right thing, but hearing the flesh constantly, the soul doesn't always know what to listen to, because if it listens to the spirit and works with the spirit, the flesh gets angry and attacks. And you go through that whole situation where you're sitting and you're deliberating things in your brain because you're like, okay, which is more right here? Like, the body thinks it's going to upright die if I don't do what it wants to do. And the spirit's like, oh, you can do this. But at the same time, it's like you can't, it's because it's not as needy as the flesh is. It's like the soul, that intermediary, is confused half the time. So in my case, ooh, this is
Brandon,
why
that sounds so freaking complicated, man.
Humans are complicated, okay?
Yeah, but just I think it's just our difference in modes of thought and how we process things. But to me, reconciling all that, I don't know. Like, you were talking about how you are. Well, you used an analogy for how you are slow to start, like you're a slow train coming in or something. What was it that you said?
Yes, just a slow train coming. But once I come, I'm there.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit different, like, for figuring things out instead of trying to figure out as I get there. I guess there's nothing wrong with the two modes of thought, but yours definitely stresses me out. The idea that before I can get where I need to go, I just need to, like, process this and understand this and think this. I'm like, let me just make a mess, and then I'll figure out what I need to figure out. What I don't need to figure out, I'll either just discard and not worry about, or I'll just what's the word when you let other people take care of it? You'll
delegate.
I'll delegate this. It's like, this is not my ministry. This is beyond my capabilities and my giftings. You know what? I'm not going to try and be a C doing an A's job. I'm going to do a C's job and let the A's do all their stuff,
But you see, both sides have their ups and minuses. On my end, there's a lot of stress that's going on, and obviously I need to get out of my head. And that's why I've learned to be an external processor. I don't stay in my head because I know my head is stupid. And will just constantly go through all these worries and stuff. So I talk out loud often to get the thoughts out of my head, because I recognize once they're out of my mind, like, oh wow, once I do get my keys in the house, like, no, the keys are there, the money's there, the wallet's there, I've got the proper amount of gas in the car's going to reach its destination, and all the things that need to be packed up are packed up and with me at the target destination.
Is that true though? Because with this porn stuff, you said that before and you thought, oh, well, I've got this. I haven't dealt with it in a while. I'm here. I've got this figured out. And then happens again.
I mean, yeah, so there happens to be those situations as well, but there are a lot of things in my life that I do have pretty good. There's some things that work really well, and sometimes I hit situations where I didn't think of those particular things, but it's not like it's a common thing. That's what I'm trying to say. I mean, I couldn't tell you. Like, I mean, again, like I've been trying to explain, it's not perfect. Like, it's not a perfect system. Like, there's definitely flaws in the way that I do what I'm doing. I know there are other things I might not have seen, but there are, for instance, again, like, you know how some people, they don't learn until they will fall into, because I'm able to learn from their mistakes and think about them before I do them. I don't have to go through things to learn every little thing. Some things I absolutely do, but I'm open-minded enough and flexible enough that I can learn and see, you know what? Don't have to do that. Don't have to fall down that pitfall, you know? Like, because that's part of the overthinking part, the part of the slow train coming aspect, because, now I've gone through those situations. Why did that lead to that direction? How is this applicable to me? Do I need to work on this? All that kind of stuff. But I feel like if I were to just completely just not just fly out there and deal with it later kind of thing, that has its own downsides as well. Like, it's not perfect, but that's why we're good friends, because there are parts of you that help me, that are important, and I need to grow in. So it's like I need to not overthink things.
Yeah, we need to get you a deep tissue massage, Brandon.
Yes.
Just, help you work out those kinks. I mean, I've got those too, but I think you titling this an emotional storm is kind of interesting. Excuse me, because it makes me think about that one verse where, or that story where Jesus is crossing the sea and that storm happens, and he told his disciples and all the people that were with him, like, how to handle things like that. I mean, through context, you understand that there's already been a discussion about this, and then they're waking him up like, hey, Jesus, wake up. We're about to die, dude. And he's like, what do you work? Winds, just chill, guys. Just chill, guys. What's your deal? Just relax, But at the same time, it's like you can't. Well, I guess from our perspective, it's not about stopping the storms, but going through them. Because there's also that passage that says you're supposed to mourn with those who mourn and rejoice with those who rejoice. It's not saying, well, just rejoice. And when people are mourning, just fix the situation and move on. It's like, no, go through it.
Yeah.
And I think, especially when you're going through situations where you grieve how you have failed, or you attach identity to your actions or lack of actions. I don't know. I think it's really important to sit in that for a minute and just ask God, okay, well, how do you feel about this? Even though I feel this way.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Asking God what he believes or sees about that is stuff that I already do a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But even doing that, there's that constant back and forth where it's like, I believe that I heard God, but I don't feel like I heard God. And because I don't feel that creates a storm that I can either go through and wait it out, or I can get caught up in the storm and believe that storm is my identity and believe that I didn't hear God. And therefore, nothing that God gives me in that moment will ever stick, because it's always in question. And that's what I'm recognizing, is that it's like, just because I don't feel like I'm free, just because I don't feel like I heard God, just because I don't feel something, in the moment, I don't feel the peace in the moment, does not mean that Jesus is not there, that I'm not free, or that what that person says that is trustable is a lie. Like
Mm-hmm.
suddenly, like I have the option to weather the storm of what I'm feeling in the moment, all the chaos that's going on, and just push through and do what I know I need to do, and let Jesus sleep in the boat, then have to go and wake him up like, Jesus, do you not feel the rain hitting your face? We were gonna drown.
It's like, Jesus, dude, you need to get it together because I don't think you realize what's happening.
I don't think you realize that water is pouring into the boat. You look like a sopping wet mess. Don't you care that we're going to drown? Don't you care that I'm probably going to end up looking at porn again because of all what I'm feeling right now, whatever, and it's just like, just to recognize that just because I feel it doesn't mean I have to act on it, which is something I knew, but to then begin to take it a step further and to recognize how I feel as a storm, and just to put it into that context that it's a storm and storms pass. Because I lived in Florida, okay? In Florida, you had storms every day from like 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Like, it's just, there was a storm all the time, it felt like. That's a bit of a hyperbole, but it was pretty frequent. It's a swamp for good reason. But they would pass. They didn't stick around. Like, it was, and some were pretty bad. Like, there was one year when I was probably in like second grade, maybe third. I was at this Bible school, and it was raining so bad in Florida, this storm, that morning turned into night. Like, it was that bad. Like, the sun was starting to rise. You could see the sun rising. Storm came in. The clouds were so thick. It was so dark that the street lights turned back on. And it was just pouring so bad that moles in the ground were drowning. Like, they were coming out for air. Like, doesn't always happen, even though it rains a lot in Florida. And that was a pretty bad storm. But it passed. It kept on going eventually, and the sun came back out, and the moles didn't all suffocate to death. You know? So it's just like, that's the same thing with our emotions. When the emotions get really negative, when the depression won't leave, when the anxiety won't stop, when the anger won't pass, like, it doesn't have to say anything. You don't have to accept those feelings as, this is who I am now, and I have to act upon those feelings. That's not me. You're not depressed. You're not angry. You're not anxious. Like, you can be sad, you can be angry, you can have an anxious moment, but that doesn't have to define you. That doesn't have to control your life simply because you feel it. And that's what I'm learning right now. That's where I began to learn about, like, we had it peace equals now. Like, that was the process when I got to that revelation where I don't have to wait until I feel peaceful to enter into peace. Like I don't have to understand what the answer is before I have peace. I can be at peace before I have the answer, and trust that there is a God and a YouTube and a Google and a friend and a parent and whomever else, and a book that eventually I will come across that will have the answers that I need. And until that point, until I get to that place, I don't have to sit doing absolutely nothing, laying on the floor because I'm anxious.
I think here's a slightly different perspective, because there are things that I've been dealing with my entire life, and then sorry, this thing popped up. Okay. There's things that I've been dealing with my entire life, and I still struggle with, to a degree. And it's like, the more I've tried to figure it out, the worse it gets. The more difficult it is to understand it, to action it. It's like the hyper-focus eggshell phenomenon, if that's a phenomenon. It's like, you're so focused on it, and you're focused on not doing the thing, that's the thing that you end up doing because you're so focused on not doing it. You know what I mean? And in walking with Jesus and trying to learn what that looks like to let him love me and let him guide me through things. I mean, I don't know if you guys can read this, but even inside my ring, I don't know if that's showing up. It
Um,
says, yeah, look at that. Let
let
God
God
lead.
lead.
Yeah, in my wedding ring, right? And it's like sometimes things persist not because, you know, they're bigger than God or whatever, but he uses everything for good. I mean, we all know this, and if you don't know this, I mean, that's the truth. God uses everything for the good. But I think kind of like just watching your struggle and your porn whatever. There's so much that you've learned in different seasons from the same thing, um, and I think the question that's at the forefront of people's minds, especially when they go through storm after storm after storm after storm after storm, and it's the same storm. It's, is this ever going to end? And I think that's a rational human question. But from God's perspective, I don't know if that's a godly perspective. Like, is this ever going to end? I don't know. I'm just thinking through this. I'm just kind of like stream of consciousness. Because honestly, the whole gospel and everything with Jesus is about having a daily relationship where he shows you things and loves you regardless of your situation. Like earlier, and I'm going to take a step in a direction that give me some grace through this, because I don't mean it the way that you're probably going to take it, viewer. But somebody on social media, that meme, Brandon, where it's the dude sitting at the desk and he's got it's outside and he's got this big cardboard sign that has something, or he's making a
Change your
statement like
mind.
coffee is bad, change my mind.
Yeah.
Right. He's sitting there and he's like, pedophilia is a sexual orientation. Changed my mind. And then the scene below that had Waldo from Where's Waldo with the sniper rifle, and it killed the guy. And the person's caption said, "This man's doing God's work." And like a lot of people look at different sins, like pornography or pedophilia or alcoholism. And I'm not comparing them. I'm not lumping them all together, because some of them are worse than others, much worse than others, but in God's eyes, sin is sin, and it's really easy to think that because we deal with a specific sin, that we're less in God's eyes than if we deal with this sin, and thinking, okay, well, because of the severity of this sin, I need God to purge this from my life that much more and that much more quickly. And the whole reason I bring that up is, one of the biggest perspectives that you can have as you're following Jesus is understanding that he loves you regardless, even people that deal with pedophilia, and thinking, oh well, what kind of God am I following if he loves somebody that's a pedophile? Well, I get that. I get that, because it's a very difficult thing to navigate, and it's not good. It's not okay. But God always looks at your value and who you are before the circumstance. And so just because that circumstance maintains, it's like, well, God, where are you in this? Well, I'm present, but this may be present in your life for the duration of your life, but I'm still going to do amazing things with it. And I think, the way you navigate it and the way I navigate things like that, not pedophilia, but just sin in general, I think there's merit to both, because people look at your life, Brandon. Like, so many people come to me and they're just talking about you, saying Brandon is so intentional. Brandon, is so forward. He's so pure. Like, there's all these admonishing adjectives that people associate with you because of that. And I think there's just something so special about giving up the reins and, as my ring says, letting God lead. Because, man, in marriage, when I'm arguing with my wife, or if I'm having a difficult, and we're trying to figure something out and we're not communicating, we're not seeing things from the same perspective, it's so much more difficult to just go through it and let God do his thing than try and strong arm the process, because we want to change it, but I think the focus should be on, God, what's your heart like? What are you changing in me through this? I don't care if the process changes for the better or not. What's more important is that you're being glorified through this. And I think that's a big nugget that's hard to swallow for a lot of people, especially if they're a new Christian, because we're so focused on ourselves instead of glorifying God.
Well, I get what you're saying for the most part, but I don't think, I feel like what you're describing, unless I'm misinterpreting it, is part of the puzzle, but not the whole puzzle. Because, I can't help you with your snowstorm, Stormy. Sorry.
Well, see, the issue there is that you're also a woman.
Wow.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I'm ready to punch you through the screen, Tim.
No, but seriously.
Oh, wow. Anyways.
Just kidding. Stormy, I hope you get home safely. Please drive safe.
Yes, and stop texting us while you're driving in the snow.
That's what I was thinking. So not only are you a woman, but you're texting driving. Once again, I'm just kidding. She's probably just riding with somebody, but please get home safely.
Yes. Please stop texting us while driving. Anyways, but like I feel like that's a part of the puzzle. But I feel like God is able to use. God is able to use all the things that we're going through to help other people, to help us. He could use all things for good. That does not mean, I don't think by any shape, way, or form, that if we have tried to stop doing something and keep going through it, then maybe this just needs to be completely left alone and we never re-examine this and work on it and get past it, kind of thing, which is at least how I'm specifically interpreting what you're saying. I don't know if I'm interpreting what you're saying correctly.
Well, I think just instead of focusing on the situation and our part in it and everything, which is good, like we're supposed to do that. That's what wisdom is. It's understanding your role in your relationship with God and accountability and all that. But I think it's really easy. Like when I'm being like, one of the common themes for me is insecurity, not thinking that I'm worth the situation. As I'm going through that, it's really difficult to not focus on my role in it, because I know that I can push myself. I can try. Like we were just, you have two sides of it, right? You have one side where it's like, well, this is how it is, and that's just how it is, and just deal with it. And then you have one side that's like, okay, well, this is what's going on. You need to fix this. So for instance, if somebody is, offended by, Asian jokes, because I'm Asian. If somebody's super offended by Asian jokes, instead of saying, oh, we can't mention Asian things around them, because like if somebody mentions chopsticks and I'm like, that's racist, being on that side of things, it's like, okay, well, we can't mention Asian things around Tim because that's gonna tickle his insecurity. We shouldn't do that. But then on the other side, it's like I can be so focused on Tim, you can't be upset about anything Asian, and you can't, racist jokes are not okay. And then if anybody makes anything that's remotely racist, or not saying that racism is okay, but just like you can go overboard with that too.
Yeah.
They're just kind of like writing lines saying, well, I'm going to do what I can. Ultimately, God desires a relationship with me outside of the circumstance, and the circumstance comes second to him loving me and teaching me things anyways. So it really doesn't matter that much. Like if you went into a church and said, hey, your sons and daughters are going to likely 90%, they're going to be exposed to pornography. Some of them are going to have addictions to it. Some of them are going to, have that draw to it. And that's also going to be an entry to some of them, I don't know, sleeping around, having premarital sex. There's a lot of, we need to fix this. Let's put blocks on our internet. Let's not let kids have phones until they're 18. Let's tell them all the dangers of sex, instead of just saying, well, here's God's perspective on this. Here's what it looks like when he's loving you while teaching you this. You might mess up, but that's okay, because we're in a broken world where we mess up doing things. We're taught that we can't mess up, and that there's such a fine line between you being a good person and not messing up, and you being the worst person because you made one bad decision. But God doesn't care about that because of grace. He does care about your heart position towards it. Like, oh, I messed up. man, that's not great. Like,
Well,
on one side, it's like you could argue, well, because there's grace, I'm just going to go sleep around and look at all the porn that I want because God's going to forgive me anyways. I'm not saying that's good either.
no, but like I think it needs to be said though that like no sin before God is he ever okay with the sin. You
Oh, of
know?
course not.
Yeah, and that needs to be so that like there should be no point where it's like, well, God's grace is sufficient, so let's just not concern ourselves with overcoming this thing and keep working on it until we overcome it. And if that's what if you're thinking that I'm on the opposite end of that spectrum where it's like we need to like do everything we can, become super anxious about it, and like do all these things, that's not what I'm suggesting at all. That's not what I'm talking about. I know.
Well, I was just thinking about earlier when you said that you knew you were going to go into this, and you knew that you wanted to be beyond this, and you've worked, and then it made you anxious, thinking, "Oh, well, I'm having this temptation." That's what I'm talking about. The level of anxiety that comes along with trying to do the good thing or do the right thing or the righteous thing.
Well, like there's still, but what I'm realizing is I still have a part to play in resisting temptation. I can't like you have to understand over the year that I've been going through this again, I have definitely felt like let's just step back, not try to resist anything and let God take care of the situation. And every time that I've done that, God's not taking care of the situation. Instead, what he has done is he has shown me where my perspective is wrong. And then once he's done that, then there is always an action point for me that I need to work on. Like, and so in this case, like yes, if I were to sit here and become anxious, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't. Okay, yeah, like that's not helpful. That's upping the anxiety. But when I came to the realization today that this is a storm and storms pass, that took a lot of pressure off of me. As one who has dealt with anxiety, now I realize there is like I have the ability, the right, and the power, despite how I feel, to walk away from this. Even though I still really want to look at porn, I don't have to. I get to move away, because if I go do something else, eventually it will pass, and it may take a while before I can get to the computer or my phone, but it will pass. And I don't have to act upon it. And that was the biggest confusion that I had, was that because I felt tempted, and after doing my action points, nothing went away, therefore there was still an issue, then there was no endurance in that thinking. So I would instead become more anxious because I would do everything that I knew to do, and the feeling of temptation wouldn't go away. And so I figured, okay, well, there must be something else that must be dealt with. So until I figure what that is, I'm going to look at porn. And that wasn't working. And until I realized, and then I realized today that, wait a minute, okay, so just because the feeling is still there doesn't mean that I have to act on it. It is just a storm, and storms pass, and storms move on. And if I don't act on it, but instead find something else to do, even though it's like being properly prepared to go to the gym. If you go to the gym with the right mindset that it is going to suck, and you're going to strain your muscles, and you're going to go to places where you feel like you're going to die because you can't breathe, but you know that that's a part of the process, then you're much more willing to go to the gym because you know what you're getting yourself into. It's called counting the cost.
Brandon, I think this is a prophetic word for you, because I was going to talk about going to the gym. Because, you and I had a discussion, what was it, like a month or two ago, about working out. And you said, what was it that you said about your body hurting and then you stopping and not knowing about that you needed to push past that?
Yeah, like I when it came to me feeling like I was going to faint or something of that nature, I was like, that doesn't seem normal. Something is
Hmm.
wrong. So I would stop in self-preservation, thinking
Hmm.
that something is going bad to happen. Since that point, that has no longer been a blockade, but up to that point, it was a
Hmm.
blockade.
Yeah, I was kind of the same way because Ariane and I have been going to the gym pretty regularly for the past year or so. Maybe not even an entire year. I don't know. But like you'll go to the gym and you'll start doing your sets, and you do like 3 sets of 10 or 4 sets of 8. I don't know, whatever people do. Um, and then the next day you're sore, and it's like, wow, this sucks. And then the next you're supposed to have a rest day, and then the next day it's like, oh man, I'm still sore, like, and then you find yourself making excuses because of the pain, because it doesn't feel like you're growing, it doesn't feel natural, and working out is so weird because everything in our bodies tells us and has taught us pain equals something's wrong, but pain also equals growth, and sometimes you have to push past that. Like when you're running and you start to get a cramp, my go-to thing ever since I was young is I'm just going to start walking. But there's a second wind that you get when it comes to stuff like this. When you push through it, once you can identify, oh, this is just a temporary storm, using the language of the stream, you start to realize, okay, well, I just need to endure this, and then I just need to keep pushing without stopping to analyze. Okay, well, what should I do? Oh no, like, why
Ex-
my stomach hurts? No, I must have cancer. No, dude, you're just in a storm.
yeah.
You got a cramp because just keep running.
Exactly, and that's what the whole purpose of this stream about is what I've been trying to talk about. What I realized today is
Hmm.
that what I'm feeling is just a natural part of life. Like we already know. Like I already knew from my studies that when an addict goes away from their addiction, they have withdrawal symptoms. You go away from alcoholism, you're going to have issues with that. You go away from drugs, you're going to have withdrawal from that. Same thing applies to porn. When you step away from porn, you're going to have withdrawal symptoms. There's going to be
Hmm.
feelings that you don't want to deal with that are going to rise up, feelings of anxiety or anger or depression or whatever, because
Hmm.
that thing that fires off that takes care of that for you is no longer being applied, and now your brain is getting unwashed, dried off from all that washing over of the overstimulus.
Hmm.
And so when I realized, and so the problem that I've been having this whole time, Tim, is that when I felt those symptoms, I was thinking, oh no, there's something in me that's not been dealt with.
Hmm.
And then I wouldn't resist it because I was like, no one is there to help me and God's not giving me the answer, so I'm going to keep waiting until I have the answer. The whole time, I had the answer.
Yeah.
I just didn't realize the pain was a natural part of the healing process.
Hmm.
Even though I knew that, Tim, I knew that from my studies. I can't say that I didn't know that. I wasn't able to connect those dots with what I was presently going through. And so that's what the whole purpose of this thought raid is about. It's that in the process of making healthy decisions and doing the right thing, we will go through emotional storms. We will go through these flurries of feelings, whether they be anxiety or anger or whatever it may, insecurity, whatever you may feel. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're on the wrong track, that you've missed it
Hmm.
somehow, that that you're not making progress. And I guess this whole purpose is I just want to encourage people to know, if you're like me, that you thought that you made the decision to, like we talked about with working out, like we made the decision to work out, and now I feel like I'm going to die in the middle of this workout or whatever. Doesn't mean that you actually are. That just means that your body is getting used to its new normal, and it doesn't like it, and the flesh always thinks it's
Hmm.
dying whenever it goes through something that's not pleasant. and that's just a natural part sometimes of the growing process.
Also, I think it's kind of relatable to what we've been doing with Thought Raid, because you've been putting more and more and more and more and more on your plate, and you feel like God's talking to you about all these lofty goals and dreams and things that is going to happen with it. And you just got to a point about 3 weeks ago. You said to me and Eric, I don't know what else I can put on my plate. And once you get to that point where you've done everything that you know to do, sometimes all you need to do is be consistent and keep going without giving up. You don't really have to change things up or do more. And I think that at least the American dynamic in that is we're taught that if we haven't seen the results that we want, we just need to change it up and try something different. Well, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you just need to keep going and just realize it's going to suck. And, you might be going down Interstate 40 and you're heading to your destination and a storm passes. Like, I remember I was working at the mall and I was driving home. I lived in Davie County at the time. And this snow happened, right? And I was thinking to myself, maybe I should pull over, And then I got to the bridge that leads over from Forsyth County into Davie County, and there was this tractor trailer that had jackknifed on the bridge. And I'm sitting there in traffic because there was like a 20-car pileup in front of me, thinking, man, then when is this ever going to be over? And I was thinking to myself, okay, should I abandon the route, or should I just wait? And I waited for 2 hours, and then that's equivalent to a lot of people's how they navigate different issues, whether it's pornography, relationships. Should I give it up and should I try something else, or should I just stay the course? Now, this is a bad example because I turned around and I got off the interstate and came home a different way. But there have been so many times where I've been waiting in a line and I see a line that looks shorter, and then I get out of my place back here and I go over here. And by the time I've gotten over there and secured my place, if I just stayed in that line, I would have been at the front and already been through whatever.
Yep. I've been through that a couple times.
Yeah. I guess, in Corinthians 13, it says love is patient. I think patience is one of the key words here, because you talking about going through the storm and, anxiety and am I doing enough? I just need to be patient. I think it's really cool that you're using your situation to encourage people that are going through certain things, just saying, hey guys, relax. This too shall pass.
Yeah.
Be patient. You're going to be okay.
Yeah. Cause that's the thing. If I had known sooner that this was just a normal storm that I'm going through, and that it would have passed if I had just given myself space and time, then we might have not been talking about porn as frequently all this time. But for whatever reason, it just never occurred to me that this is just a natural part of the overcoming process, the process of resisting temptation, is that sometimes you're going to go through things that's just going to suck how it feels. But don't worry, because on the other end, it'll be a lot better. And eventually we'll get back to it, which is something I went through for 7 years. But along the way, I had to relearn it because some of the tools that I had just weren't working. And they say you go through transformations every 7 years. Like they say, what is it like? By that point, every cell in your body has changed over at least once or something of that nature. So, I mean, I don't know. I know there's a human cycle that we go through where our cells, they're replicating and they're changing. And after a certain point, you're just going to have a whole bunch of different cells than you started with. But, either way, there's this new things had to be, old things had to be relearned, and new things to the new situations had to be learned to work with the old things together for the present situation that I was in. So, I don't know. It's interesting. It's just, as one who is very in tune with my emotions, to recognize, I already knew that my emotions should be indicators, not leaders. So I already knew that. It's one of those things. I could be very pain adverse. I don't want the pain. No, thank you. But if I know that the pain is a necessary part of the growth process, I can put up with it for the sake of growing. And now realizing that what I'm going through is a natural part of the process, it's okay. not that bad. It's a lot less scary when I know that it's expected. It's like trying to go through a horror series, but you already know what the outcome is going to be. Yeah, it sucks going through that spooky uncertainty, but at least you know how the ending is going to be, and it just kind of takes care of the whole pain of the process you go through of being held the edge of your seat. Mm-hmm. Count the cost. Know the cost. Know that a part of the process of getting better sometimes means that there'll be storms, but the storms are okay, and they will go away. And you will be better for it on the other end of the storm. That will pass, and it could take hours, minutes, seconds, years, I don't know, but I do know that this too will pass. Mm-hmm. And now I know, and now you know. Welcome to Thought Raid. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You could say that, you know, perhaps God allowed me to go through all this so that I could have this experience for people who are watching, so that way people who are presently going through it can learn from this whole process with me. You could say that. I don't know, because God knows I've definitely gone to him over and 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 over again about it. So there's an entire year. Would have liked to have known about it sooner. But here we are. That'll have to be for another Thought Raid. The frustration of, like, I literally went to you about this guide like 50 times. Why could you not just told me this, I don't know, on the first time? Mm-hmm. Could have saved me the trouble, but no.
God taking his time and crap.
Yeah, I know. But, you see, at least after saying that, what's coming to me is that because he didn't give him the answer right away, there was so many aspects of this that was addressed that if it would have been taken care of sooner, I don't think I would have learned. Which I think is where you were trying to come with, just allow God to work through the process and not try to strong arm all these things. Because at the end of the day, I did get to the answer today. I got to the answer today. It just took me a whole year to get there.
Yeah, I think I need to learn a little bit about that, because I think I put too much stock in thinking to myself, oh, God's going to show me this. God, well, Tim, God might show you more stuff if you step up to the plate more intentionally sometimes, instead of just expecting him to do 80% of the work.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah. He definitely will. Like, you draw close to him and he'll draw close to you. There's a biblical principle of that. So, like, he loves when, like, one of the things I would like to encourage you guys in is that God loves questions, and there's no stupid questions for him. He loves all the questions. He won't get angry with you. Like, when you have doubts or fears or worries or whatever, like, he may get stern with you. Like, if you're like me and you've come to him for the same thing for the 50th time in a row, you're like, Brandon, I've told you this. You just have to believe it finally. Like, it's up to you to decide to believe this. I can't, no amount of time I tell you this is going to make you believe it until you decide you're going to believe it. But he still is patient and loves questions and doubts and all that kind of stuff. There's nothing that you have to hold back from him or worry about, like, will he handle it? No, of course he's going to handle it well. He came in the form of man and suffered all the same things that we did. So he's not someone that is, like, misunderstanding or something, or just doesn't get it. Like, that's not who God is. So I would love to encourage you guys, like, talk about it with God. Be angry with God. Be sad with God. Be happy with God. Be anything you're feeling with God, because that does accelerate the process of you getting things from him. Sometimes you have not because you ask not. That is a literal scripture verse in the Bible. Couldn't tell you exactly where that is, but I know it's probably specifically in the Gospels of Mark, Luke, and John. Well, now, oh God, now I feel obligated. I gotta pull this up. You have not because you ask not. Where's that? Oh, no, not the Gospels. Excuse me. Apparently, that's James chapter 4, 2 through 3. It says, you desire but do not have, so you kill. You covet, but you cannot get what you want, so you quarrel and fight. You do not have because you do not ask God. When you ask, you do not receive because you ask with wrong motives, that you may spend what you get on your pleasures. But you have not because you ask not. Like, there are just some things you may not have until you actually ask for them. Like, there's no small thing. And, of course, you want to bring your motives to God and what you're asking for, of course. But that's probably another thought raid. So, I feel like I covered this well. Is there anything else on your mind, Tim?
Nope.
Cool. Well, cool. This is pretty concise. We're right there about an hour, just a couple minutes over. Not bad. All right. Well, I want to thank you guys for watching. It's been a lot of fun. We broadcast every week on Mondays, Fridays, and Saturdays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we will be live again this Friday at 4, where we'll have a specific topic planned for you. So we look forward to that. If this video has really blessed you, please consider subscribing to us and donating to us. We have a link for that, a Patreon link at the bottom of the description, and we have tiers being at $1, and it goes from there. Every dollar that we get in donations goes into the expansion of Thought Raid, the ability for us to hire more people, the upgrading of our equipment, the ability to travel, and of course the updating of all of the stuff we do with videos and things, that it gets, better quality. Words. So we really appreciate every donation, but I want to thank you guys for watching, and we will see you again Friday, 4 p.m. You guys have a good night.